Everyone in Alberta, Canada, and beyond. It is Wednesday, November 8th, 2023, and I'm Kerry Lambert, and I welcome you to an online webinar evening of solutions for a new Alberta brought to you by the Alberta Prosperity Project, also known as APP. APP's purpose is to educate, inspire, and unite all Albertans, businesses, and organizations to protect their prosperity, individual freedoms, rights, and sovereignty by empowering the Alberta government to restructure Alberta's relationship with Canada. APP is membership driven with a goal of 1 million plus members to help steer the political process. APP memberships are 1 year for $20, 2 years for $30, 3 years for $40, or you can make a donation at albertaprosperityproject.com. Tonight's episode is called Procurement in the Food Industry and the Use of Plastic in It with Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, who is a professor in food distribution and policy at Dalhousie University in Halifax. We also have APP's interim CEO, Chris Scott, who will be joining us tonight as well. Since this is a live webinar, although the segment with Dr. Charlebois was previously recorded, we encourage you to ask questions and make comments throughout this presentation. Just put 3 question marks before your question, so it'll be flagged and we can quickly view the questions. I'd like to introduce Dr. Charlebois by telling you that his current research interest lies in the broad area of food distribution, safety, and security, and he's published over 500 peer-reviewed and scientific publications. His research has been featured in newspapers including The Economist, The New York Times, The Boston Globe, The Wall Street Journal, Foreign Affairs, The Globe and Mail, The National Post, and The Toronto Star. He has authored 5 books on global food systems. He conducts policy analysis, evaluation, and demonstration projects for government agencies. He has testified on several occasions before parliamentary committees on food policy-related issues as an expert witness, and he has been asked to act as an advisor on food and agricultural policies in provinces and countries all over the world. And with that, we'll now bring on Dr. Charlebois and Chris. Hello, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Kerry.
How's everybody doing?
Very good.
Excellent.
Here in Halifax, it's cloudy, but not too chilly.
That's right. You are in Halifax. You are at Dalhousie University in Halifax, where you are. What is your actual title? Is Director of Food? Director of Food.
Well, so I run a lab here. It's called the Agri-Food Analytics Lab. I'm a professor, but I run this really wonderful lab. It's in partnership with 3 faculties: management, agriculture, and computer science. And our job, what we do is our data analytics. So we forecast, we use AI to forecast food prices mainly and trends in general. So we've been doing that for well over 5 years now, and it's been interesting.
Yeah, needless to say. So the topic today, of course, is about procurement of food and plastic in it. Are we eating plastic?
I hope you're not eating plastic.
I hope so. I'm not either.
Certainly not something we would advise people to do, but there is a lot of plastics in our system. Obviously, anybody who's gone to a grocery store will see that we're addicted to plastics. Even before COVID, we saw a lot of plastics, but there was this movement towards reducing plastics, and people were concerned about plastic bags and utensils and the artifacts. I mean, the low-hanging fruits, and we saw governments, including obviously the federal government, looking into those particular issues related to plastics, not packaging per se, but the bags and the things that we actually use on a regular basis. And so
that's right.
There's been some regulations, some changes as a result. And but with COVID, all of a sudden we got back into plastics. We wanted more plastics in our life. We wanted to protect ourselves as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so the environment, if you will, took a backseat to what was going on with COVID for a while. But I think that ended maybe about 1.5 years ago. What we noticed is that all of a sudden environmental stewardship became an issue again. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, bans started to appear all over the place in different provinces at the federal level. Yeah. And now, ECCC, Environment Climate Change Canada, has decided to implement a P2 policy. And the P2 policy, this is the one thing we were hearing a lot. It's asking grocers to voluntarily ask vendors to reduce the amount of plastics used in packaging, in food packaging. And that's the big problem right there, because you may want to get rid of plastics, but with what do you replace it with? And that alternative, will it be cheaper, and will it allow food to be as safe as before? I mean, there are reasons why we're addicted to plastics. I mean, plastics work.
Yes.
You know, they work. They actually can keep food fresh for very long periods of time. You can actually travel with plastic. You can actually have produce, particularly, travel thousands and thousands of kilometers without compromising the quality of these products. Once in the store, of course, it protects the product from viruses and people, because there's been some incidences around the world where people would actually putting, needles in strawberries and things like that, unfortunately. Really? And so the shelf clams, I mean, those are there for a reason. So how do you replace that? And I don't think people object to replacing plastics, but the road to change is not as simple as some people may suggest.
So they're, just talking about plastics. So immediately people think that plastics are bad, and we shouldn't be having plastics either in the food, around the food, but they're a necessity in order to protect it coming on trucks, getting into the grocery store, and like you said, so that people are touching or whatever, maybe picking up a bag of lettuce, and they're not contaminating it until you get home.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so that's why I think, and we've had our fair share of food safety issues, but the problem is that if you don't have any plastics anymore, what's going to happen? And let's be honest here, nobody wants to buy ugly produce.
That's right.
There's a reason why we use lining on cucumbers, for example, is to keep the moisture in as much as possible, so that product remains sellable. And
that's right. And lasts longer too.
And last longer as well. So all of these things we need to think about, I think. But as a lab at Dow, we actually met with Environment Climate Change Canada twice this summer to kind of talk to them about the realities of dealing with supply chains, grocers, importers, farmers from abroad, and I'm thinking mainly about Arizona and California. Those are the two gardens that we use a lot as Canadians. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, our conversation with ECCC were very confrontational, I would say, because we were trying to tell them, listen, it's important that you realize you need to talk to farmers in California, you need to talk to farmers in Arizona, because tomorrow morning, if we implement changes to packaging regulations without talking to them, guess what's going to happen? They're not going to deal with Canada. I mean, it's just, if Canada becomes too expensive because of the waste generated, seeing produce traveling thousands of kilometers, by the time you get to destination, if you lose half your cargo, you're going to send your cargo to Canada. You're going to send them elsewhere. You're going to send your cargo elsewhere. And so those are the kinds of things, those are the kinds of concerns that we actually raise with the group, but they wanted none of it. And it really got frustrating after a while. So we met twice, and then that's about it. And so I don't know exactly what's going to happen, because we're into November now, and we were supposed to actually see something, and we haven't seen anything. So I think there's a lot of pushback from industry at this point.
And so there should be. But one thing to put this all in perspective is that the Environment and Climate Change Ministry has said, they've used the phrase "at all costs," climate and environment at all costs, and it sounds like we know that the costs are very high, but this is something that people don't think about. The cost of pursuing a ideological ban on plastics could be food insecurity.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it raises some major food security concerns. And right now, I mean, what is Parliament talking about like almost daily these days is the cost of living. And there are two necessities of life. And right now I would say in the last 2-3 weeks, all we've seen from Ottawa are issues related to two things: shelter and food. Yeah, basically. Right. And so we're heavily involved in food, and we've been advising Minister Champagne on this issue. On shelter, there's this whole debate about the carbon tax and heating oil. I mean, that's really the issue here. A lot of people are going to be struggling with shelter, but when it comes to food, I mean, the reality, Carrie and Chris, is that right now Canadians are spending less on food compared to last year, despite inflation. So the average Canadian right now spends about $255 a month on food. Yeah. Last year was $265. Wow. So think about that for a second, what it actually means. It means that people are, I don't know, eating less. They're going to different stores to buy food. They're wasting less, hopefully, maybe. But you can see that food inflation has violently affected people's lives. Do you want to add an extra layer of pressure by forcing grocers to actually use different packaging? Go right ahead.
What kind of packaging are the I'm assuming the feds are suggesting? Is it just like paper, or like, I'm not even sure what would they use as a substitute for plastic?
Do we just hold things in our hands, like get paid in meatballs and just hold them with no bowl?
Yeah, I got big hands. Oh, you don't have big hands? Okay, I hold maybe 4 or 5 meatballs, like decent-sized meatballs. It's funny, I got to tell you, yesterday I was at an event at Dal. It was about the environment and food. And so they had these plastic containers for our lunch. Yeah. They were nice, but...
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But, of course, they ordered too many. There were about 20 meals left in these plastics. And they couldn't get rid of, unless you ate the food, you basically were wasting all the food. Yes. And so they were asking people to just grab the food or eat on site until before they left. So sometimes you kind of you see certain measures and you scratch your head. But I actually do think that we have a plastic problem. I do believe that we need to deal with this issue. Yeah. But we also need to deal with this issue properly, giving some time to industry to look at actual alternatives that are actually going to work. Now, there are alternatives out there, organic, compostable alternatives, but these alternatives are all more expensive than the current solution.
And I can definitely see that. Like, we've talked about packaging. One of my side gigs is I'm an actor, so being on set, they always give you food.
You're an actor?
Yeah, they give you food in these plastic containers and plastic forks. Actually, they're now bamboo forks and bamboo knives, which
of course
don't even get into that. Trying to eat something that remember having those little ice cream containers made out of plastic with the wooden spoon. Everything now tastes like that wooden spoon, and it's it's horrible eating salad with
I can deal with bamboo and utensils. I can't deal with paper straws. I just can't.
Well, and that's another thing too, is that I actually go out of my way to look for a place that has proper straws. Now, whether or not they're plastic or maybe they're plastic coated, but to have a freezy drink with a paper straw by the time you finish it, and that paper straw is now just a big pile of mush and you're trying to use it. Again, these were rules that were implemented that I don't think they really truly had time to think about and do the testing on their implementation. So here's the question: are the feds really thinking about having a ban on plastics by a certain year? And if it is by a certain year, come up with a proper other set of tools in order to keep our food fresh and lasting?
I honestly, I mean, it's an urban centric government that only thinks about urban values essentially, and urban values don't necessarily embrace the complexities of food supply chains.
Yeah.
Which starts with the farmer or farming, regardless where it is, either domestic or international. I mean, that's my area of expertise, food distribution. And what I've learned over the last 25 years is that you got to understand the supply chain before you do anything. And change is always good. And I mean, we can actually go through a lot of changes that I think needs to happen in order to help farmers, processors, distributors, grocers. But at the end of the day, ideology will forfeit any views, supply chain views, and understand the intricacies of supply chains or supply chain economics in general. It's about making changes, and if Europe can do it, we can do it. And this is the argument I've heard a lot in Ottawa, and even from reporters, by the way. Well, plastics, I mean, Europe is doing it. What's the problem? Are we different? Well, actually we are, because we are 40 million, a very, very big country. Some provinces don't produce as much food as others, starting with ours here in Nova Scotia. I mean, Nova Scotia cannot feed itself. Alberta can feed itself, 50 times or something? And so
I'm not sure the stat, but I know it is quite a bit. Like we would be totally fine if we were our own.
Yeah, but you can't eat. You won't be able to have lemons or chocolate or coffee.
That's right.
The beauty of our global economy, we actually do grow and produce what we're good at. We sell it to the world, make money, create wealth, and with that wealth, we buy things we want, like lemons and coffee and cocoa.
That's right.
Yeah. And so that's how it works. But a lot of, going back to ECCC, even some colleagues on campus, I have to tell you, I'm very concerned because all of a sudden, shipping lobsters on the plane in China every day and support remote localities, remote villages. They only have that as a lifestyle, and they make a decent living, but they need to sell lobsters. It's the only thing they have left. And if you are to demolish the lobster industry, for example, you wouldn't have anybody in rural Nova Scotia or rural New Brunswick. That's it. You're done. And so there's none of that thinking going on right now. None of it. It's just about, filling a 747 with lobsters, fresh lobsters, and shipping all these lobsters to China every day is unsustainable. We shouldn't be doing it. Without thinking that 60% of their salaries comes from trades. That's what really concerns me. They don't look at the whole picture. They're just looking at ideology, and ideology tends to impoverish nations.
But what happens is reality, no matter how ideologically driven you are, reality will eventually slap you in the face. So there's two things here. My first point, you kind of touched on it, is in the when you're looking at what the global initiatives are for dealing with, it's in the name of climate and environment, but eating things that aren't from your area is unsustainable. So maybe that really isn't a concern for those who have these ideological driven policies, right? So there's a remote village that on the east coast of Canada that sustains itself by farming lobster, fishing lobster. Well, that doesn't matter because again, it's at all costs. And if the costs are those remote villages, well, that's just progress, right? And I really think that's the way, that's the way they're viewing this.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's very linear, and so I think it's important to have debates on issues. But right now, it's the either or sort of debate, and you see it on social media, you see it in politics. The cancel culture is very predominant. If you're not for us, you're against us. Therefore, you don't exist. There's a lot of that going on, and I'm hoping one day that things will get back to where they were a little bit, so we can actually have a dialogue. Like I said, I think we have a problem with plastics. I think we need to do something, but to do something doesn't mean that we need to compromise our way of life in total.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. And I mean, with the carbon tax, I was actually talking to my food policy students. I teach a graduate course on food policy every Monday nights. And we had the debate on carbon taxes and food affordability. And like I've told the class, listen, I have nothing against the policy itself. It's how it discriminates against our food supply chain. I actually don't think it is wise for any nation to tax its food supply chain based on a carbon reduction policy. It's just not the right thing to do. Now, if you drive a Hummer, I don't have a problem if you pay taxes on that, to be honest. This is my own personal opinion. But if you actually are taxing farmers, if you're taxing food manufacturers, transportation companies transporting food,
exactly,
I have a problem with that.
So you mentioned that you think it's your opinion that we have a problem with plastic. So can we just back up a little bit and just tell me what is the issue with plastics? Like, what's the basis of this, and has it been debated?
Well, it's just, well, first of all, there's a lot of it, and it takes a lot of time to break down. So the argument is to actually reduce the amount of plastic so we can actually augment the amount of garbage, I guess, that is organic or can be broken down into anywhere between 14 to 21 weeks, basically. That's the idea, is to reduce waste that goes to landfill, essentially. That's the whole idea, and there's a lot of it going on. I mean, if you actually look at some of the reports, the main culprits are food companies. If you actually go on, like, we go on beaches all the time. We're half an hour from a beach all the time in Nova Scotia. So we go for walks. What do we see on beaches? Empty water bottles, McDonald's packages, Tim Hortons cups, and things like that. So it got to people. I mean, all of a sudden, people were saying, like, for many years, it was all about, well, it's probably because of the wind, because some people are reckless, whatever. But now people are looking at the brand and they say, well, that brand, that company is responsible for that cup sitting here on the beach. That really, that's the one thing that changed now the last 5 to 10 years, that corporate responsibility. And so that's why companies are looking into reducing or changing their packaging strategy, because they're looked upon as liable. And I kind of agree with that. But again, it can't be done while compromising food affordability. That's the one place I don't want to go. If you actually make food more expensive to people, I have a problem with that. I think we need to be careful here.
Well, I've also heard that, the way that we package things, you brought up water bottles, right? So yeah, people will end up disposing of their water bottles. So why don't we change to glass? Right. Well, then the problem is then we've got this extra weight and something that can be shattered or broken. But transportation costs that lead with things that are heavy, bulkier. It takes up more room in order to actually store that same amount of liquid. So I guess the big question again is, what would be the alternatives as opposed to plastic?
Well, there are tons. I mean, there's a lot of organic. I mean, there are tons. Seriously, there's been a lot of research. The problem is that there's no infrastructure to make a lot of. You need a market. You need a market. I think that's the goal for people driven by ideology. They think, well, the market will be created by us pulling. We're going to create demand. So we increase capacity for these products, and these products will become cheaper. Okay, I think that's kind of where they're going with this. The problem with that is that the road to get there may take a while, and as we know with supply chain economics, especially when it comes to food, when prices go up for a while, they rarely go down.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's be honest here. So the governor of the Bank of Canada the other day said, well, the carbon tax is responsible for 0.6 percentage point of inflation. Okay. if he said that if you actually eliminate the carbon tax tomorrow, the inflation rate would drop by 0.6% overnight for a year.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, gentlemen, I have a hard time believing that.
I agree.
Why? Because companies will take the space. They'll take the space and they'll charge more. And we saw that with Harper's government when it decided to actually reduce the GST from 7% to 5%.
Mm-hmm. We
didn't see a reduction in the inflation rate at all. In fact, actually, the inflation rate went up. So it's I have a feeling that there's this underappreciation for supply chain economics and how it impacts inflation. And so that's why as soon as you increase costs, you're increasing the cost of living to people forever.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Well, so Chris, being in the restaurant business, and of course I was briefly in the restaurant business before it was shut down with COVID.
And Chris, are you in your own restaurant right now?
He's in his restaurant right now.
I am, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
So
excellent.
When we used to buy jugs of French fry oil, lack of a better word, I believe our jugs were like 16 or 18 bucks at the time, and that was only in early 2020. How much is a jug for you now, Chris?
Well, at one point they peaked at $88 for a 16-liter jib of canola oil.
So
and I was paying 19, and that was actually what triggered me to choose a healthier option and go back to animal fat, which I still use, which by the way has less packaging.
Yeah,
that's
right. So speaking of packaging, I do have a question for you. I've seen in the food industry, I've seen a lot of claims to have of biodegradable plastics. Why don't we just put our brilliant minds to work across this country and adjust the feedstocks that we have right now and how we use it, and make products that break down on their own in a reasonable amount of time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, I've seen some packages. You go to fairs, you go to shows, and you'll see those packages. There's packages like that being introduced all the time. It's the economies of scale. That's really the challenge. If you have like a Nestle or a Mondelez or a PepsiCo coming in and say, can you make me 3 million of this, 4 million of that? There's just no capacity. You have to build it up. So that requires time. So in my opinion, what the transition has to be over several years. Yeah. And probably maybe a decade or perhaps two. And we're starting to see those changes, but to implement, to force changes, to me is a big mistake. And
so pardon me, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's getting quite noisy, so I was trying to get it while I can.
Well, noise is good for your business, so I don't mind.
That's true. Yes, that's true. So what is the consequence of not changing anything that we're doing now, in your opinion? Like, if we just continue to use plastics that we're using right now, and we continue to manage them as we have with, moderate, mostly ineffective recycling, but landfilling, what's the consequence there? We've been doing it for 70 years.
Yeah, we are. And I've lived in the prairies. I lived in Ontario. I'm from Quebec originally, and I live in the Atlantic now. The one thing I've learned being in Atlantic is, like I said, we're close to the ocean. And so we talk a lot about the ocean. We go out to the ocean. And I got to tell you, like, I see a lot of stuff, like a lot of floating stuff. And it's really, and I'm with my kids, and I ask, the kids are making comments about why is there so much bottles and bags and at the ocean, and frankly, I'm a bit concerned by that. I think as Canadians, we have the luxury to live in the best country in the world, but we also have the luxury of space. We see there's lots of space, and with space, you don't see the problems as much as Europeans, for example. And so I think that's kind of skews our views in terms of problems related to garbage and waste in particular. I lived in Europe for 2 years with my family, and I got to tell you, I mean, you think about, we had no car, we went to the grocery store, pick up our stuff, and every time you go to a grocery store, you think of the weight of everything you buy because you don't have a car, you have to carry everything. And so, and our fridge was the size of a microwave. So the notion of space, we're so spoiled. You know that we've been dumping our plastics into Asia for many, many years. And now, as soon as they said, no, that's enough, we don't want your garbage anymore, Canada, that's when we were forced to find solutions. So I think we need to move on this, but we also need to be careful with what we wish for, because we could actually hurt a lot of people.
I completely agree. And I know what you're talking about, because I'm actually from the West Coast. So I remember even as a kid being fishing and seeing stuff, especially marinas. I mean, they're filthy. You see stuff floating all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
And it creates a very powerful emotional response, because we exist in nature and we're connected to nature, whether we know it or not. So when we see nature being harmed or being not taken care of, it affects us on an emotional level. But why wouldn't we then have regional, maybe even provincial plans to deal with this issue? In Alberta, we have fantastic management of our waste here. Like we actually take waste from other parts of the country and process it and landfill it here. We don't send it to the ocean. We don't ship it to Asia. So if that is the case, and we're also an agricultural community here, so why would these federal initiatives be reaching into areas that aren't affected, like Alberta? And how could that benefit anybody?
Well, I mean, it's in fairness, it's more about political ideology. Of course, the current regime really believes in a centrist model. I think we all know this. I mean, that's and that's why there's so much tension and there's so much division around the country, because it's all about a strong Ottawa supporting provinces, whereas typically under, say, a conservative government, you would probably see more provinces being empowered by policy, and not the other way around. And so I think you raise a really good point, Chris. I think that all provinces have different socioeconomic realities, and provinces are strong enough to make their own decisions in terms of how we manage waste or how they should be managing waste. I totally agree. I think the Ottawa should empower research, should enable conditions to allow provinces to innovate and do different things and novel things. But right now, I think we all agree here, it's not what we're seeing. We're seeing a big brother-esque government looking down and say, you will do this, you will do that. And that's why there's so much division, unfortunately. And with division, you don't solve any problems. That's the problem. So people are arguing, they're confronting, they're pushing back. All of that energy is not spent on innovating, which is unfortunate.
That was a fantastic response to that. So that literally is why the Alberta Prosperity Project exists, because we want Alberta to be sovereign in these areas. We take very good care of our backyard. We watch our neighbors to the east and west do the same. And it's very frustrating to watch these policies come down from a federal government who really, as you've correctly identified, wants to become a national government, not just a not just the federal government. So
it's the I know best mentality, and it's hard to argue with that.
It is.
And between you and I, Chris, I see a lot of that on campuses right now. Like yesterday, I saw it right in front of my eyes. I know best. How dare you tell me that we should eat avocados in Canada?
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, that's right. We're talking about our backyard here, but we're shipping avocados that have a huge impact on not only the environment, but the economy and the economies of the places where they come from. But anyway, what you just mentioned, it goes back to the ideas that the country was supposed to be confederated on, which is the provinces are supposed to manage their backyard.
We don't have a confederation in Canada. It's an illusion.
It is. Our federal government has,
unless you live in Quebec,
taken the exactly. They've taken.
I'm a Quebecer.
But it's not the way it's supposed to. Yeah.
But seriously, it's Canada right now is. I wouldn't say it is in crisis or is a mess, but it's certainly it needs to figure out things. I believe, and back in 2015, a lot of people felt that there was a change with the change of regime. It was going to be for the best, but I felt that we were electing a juvenile cabinet led by a juvenile prime minister. There, I said it.
You were right.
And 8 years later, that's kind of what we got. I mean, and when I say about a juvenile regime, it's all about it's about a narrow way of seeing things, and that's really dangerous.
Yeah, I agree. So, what are some solutions here? What can we do as Albertans, as people from Nova Scotia, and as Canadians to deal with this impending problem? And not only just for reducing plastics, but
since you're both from Alberta, I actually think that Alberta's. I was in Alberta last week, and I was telling Kara it felt good because it felt normal. I want Alberta to continue to voice its concerns about all sorts of things going on in Canada. I think Alberta is a leader. I think Alberta is making Canada stronger. I think Canada needs a very noisy Alberta, whether it's the CPP or anything else. And it doesn't matter what happens to Alberta and CPP. It's the noise that matters. It's how when Alberta voices its concerns about anything, it's for the betterment of our entire country.
You're right.
And Nova Scotia, in the Atlantic, we're poor. Okay, we can't afford to voice anything because it's going to cost us some attention. I mean, a week ago, a cabinet minister in a Trudeau government mentioned, you want a voice at the table, you need to elect Liberals. That's disgusting.
Right.
That goes against democracy, our parliamentary Westminster system. And to me, it was really indicative of how trouble the current government is. And so all Canadians need a strong and very noisy Alberta right now.
Wise words. Absolutely. And I know
we're happy to oblige.
Dr. Charlebois, I know you have to leave right away. We're going to stick on and we're going to take some questions from the people watching this webinar. We'll definitely have you back. I said that right at the beginning too, is that we could talk pretty much about anything. University, we could talk about food, and we really didn't even get into the whole distribution thing. We were just kind of talking about.
Oh yeah, we can talk about a whole lot of things. And I'm in Alberta two more times this month. So we're probably going to meet at some point.
Well, it would be great if we could do that. So we'll exchange.
I know a great burger place.
Right in the middle of nowhere, but man, they make the best fries, the best burgers for sure.
Gotta go. I gotta go there.
Thank you very much. And we'll talk to you again. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Look at that. There's a billion of us on here. How did that happen?
Wow. I'm not sure, but it's really strange.
So thank you so much for sticking around and watching that. That, of course, was the recorded part. And now we're doing the live. There was tons of questions, tons of engagement. I really wanted to say thank you again to Dr. Sylvain Charlebois for taking time out of his extremely busy day. He was actually going to try and come on live with us on tonight, Wednesday. His schedule didn't work out that way. We ended up kind of bending over backwards doing the recording. And even before we went live on the air, it was the conversation I was having with him was, wow, we could talk about a whole bunch of things. And you know what? The comments in the comments and the questions actually brought up everything we talked about. So the topic at the beginning was about packaging, and it was about distribution and what the environment, climate change Canada was basically trying to get their dirty little hands in and telling us, you can't. There are certain rules that we're going to do in terms of packaging. But right away, we talked about that packaging. And then sure enough, people were commenting what I would call consumer or personal packaging, doing the Ziploc containers, plastic wrap, doing brown bag or brown wax paper from a butcher. So there was that portion. And then again, the next portion that easily came up was recycling, right? And there's so many things that we could be dealing with. And it was obviously not long enough to have him on, but we'll definitely have him back. And if you haven't gone to check him out on Twitter or I'm just going to call that back up here. There you go. That's his Twitter. And actually, I'm just going to call up. I've got a bunch of different windows open here specifically to answer some of the questions that did come up. So he is the food professor, not food processor, food professor. And he actually said he just came up with that name and it was available. And it kind of made sense because then you don't actually have to know how to spell Charlebois. Unless you're French, you probably may not get that correct. So, but what a great conversation to have with that.
You know what my favorite part was?
What's that? Oh, near the end when he's actually talking about Alberta. That was
part where he says the country needs Alberta to be noisy about these things because Alberta really is one of the only places that can do it.
Yeah. And
he hit the nail right on the head there.
Yeah.
You recall, Kerry, when I tried to back the conversation up a bit. I said, let's go back a little further and talk about what is this problem that we are dealing with or that the federal government wants to deal with. And is it really a problem? Because where have we heard this before? Mm-hmm. Oh, we have this big problem. It's for your own good. We need to do this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We hear it all the time. And it's like the conversation just gets steamrolled past the debating of the problem, past the science of the problem, and onto a solution.
Yeah.
And then they attach at all costs to it. It's insanity.
Yeah. Yeah. I did want to answer quite a few of these questions. We're probably going to go back and forth on a couple of topics here, but this is actually something that him and I, that Dr. Charlebois and I talked about before we went on the air. Can the doctor discuss using tinfoil for cooking or food storage, and is it possible we are consuming some? You know what? According to the good doctor, he said tinfoil and aluminum foil are different. If we're using aluminum foil, which is pretty much what we're using right now, the amount of aluminum getting into your diet is almost insignificant, so you're probably safe there. However, if you do feel that there is an issue, then just try and cut it out of your diet. And again, there's the stuff that is packaging and when it gets delivered to your grocery store and when you go and pick it up, and then there's the consumer way of dealing with packaging. So once you get it home and you decide what to do with it, again, the recommendation is actually not to store it in an aluminum casing. So whether or not you put aluminum foil, I know my mom used to do this all the time. She'd take some meat or something and then put aluminum foil over top of a bowl. That is not good. It's just not enough of a seal around there, and you're just kind of wasting that. So if you're going to do anything, then you can use your plastic saran wrap. There's other things out there that I've called up on the website. Let me just change. I have to actually change.
So I like the one about the comments about recycling, Kerry.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, something that I've found out is that our tax dollars support a lot of different recycling initiatives, and municipalities actually pass bylaws saying that you have to recycle. So Kerry, in Calgary, I'm assuming that you have to recycle in your area by order of council, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And if you don't, I'm assuming there's fines or something, or you just have to pay regardless, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So here's the deal. Anytime the government implements these things and we don't pay attention, it goes bad. Do you know what percentage of products actually get recycled?
Actually get recycled?
What you said.
Oh, like
the portion that you said, how much gets recycled?
I was just going to say, because of course I recycle everything. Everything goes into my blue bin.
Right. I'm talking after you. Once it goes through the processing plant,
exactly,
that receives tax subsidies
Yeah.
and government grants to recycle,
Probably
it's
almost
less than 20%.
Yeah. Isn't that gross?
And there's multi-million, like hundreds of millions of dollars facilities, paid for with our tax dollars in part, turned into big business, making a lot of people wealthy, funneling money into the municipality. And guess what? It doesn't do a damn thing because most of the stuff ends up in the landfill anyway. But people get rich because it's for our own good.
Yeah. And is there a government body that actually looks after that provincially, or is it municipality? Do you know?
I think they were recycled.
The people are recycled.
They're recycled, like politicians. Recycled. I actually don't know. I guess we could look into what ministry is responsible for recycling, or if it's municipal or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where they're accountable to us because obviously they're elected and they make laws to our benefit or whatever. Yeah. But we don't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Until now.
That's right. I just want to go back and quickly talk about the 4 alternatives to plastic food containers. Again, these would be what you could use at home. This is all stuff I think everybody knows. Glass, you can use stainless steel, cloth, and cardboard. Although I'm not, what would you do? Just store apples in boxes. Eco-friendly alternatives to plastic packaging. What I was actually looking for is I've been to many trade shows, and they've actually got this almost like plastic gelatin type of organic substance. Again, that's what you could use at home. That's pretty much all I got on that.
Carrie, this is so. I really liked Dr. Charlebois' presentation.
Yeah.
I like that he's sounding the alarm about this terrible policy. Yeah. But again, a lot of these things I do not agree with.
Yeah.
For instance, like some of those alternatives, sure, they're great if they make sense and they actually accomplish the goal that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
You know what Walmart did? Do you know how many plastic bags Walmart sent to the landfill when they rolled out their No More Plastic Bags initiative, and now you have to pay for bags made of what? Plastic fibers? Millions of pounds.
Probably because they were told they couldn't use them past a date, and they had to basically get rid of them. Again, policy.
They were subsidized to replace their plastic bags with reusable. And now, instead of going to Walmart and getting a bag from them that costs a penny and a half, now you have to spend $1 or $2 or $3 or $4 on a bag times however many times every time you go there because you're like me and you forget the bags in your car. Yeah. And then they end up in the landfill anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Like these policies and initiatives, they don't even make sense.
Yeah.
Like they're saying we want to reduce plastics and packaging. I'm sorry, but you didn't do that. You didn't accomplish that goal because the products that you're putting out are just as intrusive as the products you're replacing.
Yeah.
And they don't work as good.
Yeah. And again, this conversation was definitely off topic of what we were trying to initially start with and talk about what was happening within Environment and Climate Change Canada and putting the policies through in terms of plastic. But it's just a natural progression to talk about, what can we do as consumers and what is available to us in order to do this and then recycle. So maybe we'll not only have Dr. Charlebois back to talk about more about the distribution, where we get our food from, how long it lasts, all that. That was the kind of questions that I had already written down to ask him, and I've since sent him an email to see if he can answer some of those questions back. But also to talk about if we can find someone maybe to talk about exactly how to be best stewards for our land and do some proper recycling and what actually happens when stuff goes in our blue bins. What actually happens. Speaking of which, I do have a tab for that. I'm just the master of tabs while I was sitting watching watching the pre-recorded portion. Of course, I was in the back trying to call up some stuff. So yeah, there are collection services, the Recycling Council of Alberta. This just happens to be glass, but there are many different categories: metal, paper. I actually saw one of our friends, Brent, is on here, and he does moving, and he's always picking up some stuff, and I'm pretty sure he probably has some interesting stories about stuff that he's picked up and how he deals with the recycling as well too. So there's lots of things that we can be doing.
But everything we do,
yeah,
we should make sure that it's effective and sustainable.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
The whole idea. We have a plastics problem. So Ford and GM and Mopar, they're not using petrochemical based seat cushions anymore.
That's right.
Now they want to save the planet, so now they're using soy based seats and soy based tires.
Yeah.
Well, millions of people starve on this planet every year, and now we're using farmland to grow car seats so that you can drive your Lincoln or your Escalade and feel virtuous because you're sitting on vegetables. Meanwhile, there's people starving. And that farmland could have been used for that, right? So that's something throughout this. I've learned that we need to back the conversation up a little bit or a lot and look at where these things started, right? It's kind of the same idea as climate change. Yeah. Well, we have to get rid of CO2 at all costs. And then we could talk, oh, well, how are we going to lower our carbon footprint? Well, I'm going to turn my computer off at night. I'm going to walk to work. I'm going to do this. But we need to back up that little step and say, why are we doing this? And is it necessary? Is it beneficial? Or is it actually detrimental?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that people did bring up is asking about the peel, which is basically like a plastic alternative that, that wraps, perfect example, avocados that we were just talking about, and makes them last longer.
Anything from Bill Gates is great, and I endorse that product.
So again, the problem with that is it's plant-based, and so it would be different if it was a natural byproduct of a plant. As it's going through, maybe the skin gets changed. But if it's actually grown, and it does list off on the website, you can just go to appeel.com, appeel.com, and look it up for yourself, and it lists off the ingredients and how it's actually made, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, it's just kind of like, so we're doing this and taking away good farmland from actually growing proper food when, we are obviously in Alberta. We're heavily hydrocarbon based and able to use plastic wrap and get rid of it. And that was another conversation again that spun off of this. Was what do you do with all this garbage in the end? And there is actually a company, I looked it up, and of course it's in Quebec, and it's called Enerchem, and they actually will take waste and convert it into sustainable fuel.
I have a DeLorean that does that.
Really?
Yeah. I have a question for you, Kerry.
Yes.
You believe in coincidence?
I'm more of a fatalist, to be quite honest. I believe that there are no coincidences, and that we're all fated to do certain things. That's
okay. Well, then you know what? That's in looking at this next comment through those goggles might be a little bit terrifying. Yeah. Is it a coincidence that the federal government is coming out with this crusade on plastics and food packaging at the same time as our wonderful medical and ethical savior Bill Gates is releasing a product called Apeel that replaces packaging in the food industry?
That's very true.
How amazing of a coincidence. And now the government, our federal government, is actually trying to legislate, telling us that we have to use, they're saying we can't use what we have now, and this Apeel is a great alternative. Mm-hmm. We have to use Mr. Gates' product and funnel more money into Mr. Gates, like the billions of dollars we funneled to him over the last 3 years. Doing the things we've done. Isn't that a coincidence? Yeah.
I'm just going to throw up a couple of the comments, and I know we did answer them during the webinar. And Ottawa subsidizes everything else. Why not the development of new compostable plastics? Well, they do to a certain point. They do grants and they do that sort of stuff. But again, I think the take home from Dr. Charlebois was scalability. And no matter what they come up with, you have to imagine that they have to create millions and millions, billions and billions of these packaging. And not only is it consumer packaging, like what you actually get when you take it off the shelf, but there's also the distribution packaging, things in boxes, and they're wrapped so that bananas will last for a year and a half or whatever it needs to be, right? So there's that stuff that we really didn't get into in terms of what the distribution is, and that is something that Dr. Charlebois that's his research is how to make food last practically forever, right? And what is the best way to do that? Is it refrigeration? Is it proper temperature? Is it zero oxygen encroaching on it? That stuff,
freeze dried,
freeze dry everything.
Like that song. We should do that song at karaoke one of these days. That freeze dried, freeze dried.
I don't think that's the words, but it's yeah.
I think that's what it is. I have another theory as to why. Can you put that question up again?
Why
don't we use, or why isn't the government subsidizing compostable plastics?
Yes.
First off, I will say we do not want the government to subsidize anything. We want them to get out of our business, get out of our lives, get out of our wallets, and allow us to create great products and inventions and bring them to market free of overregulation, and let the market and the people decide. That's what we really want, not subsidizing. But specifically to answer the question, the reason we don't develop compostable plastics, we already have them. Many, actually most water bottle companies that I've seen have their water in compostable water bottles.
Yeah.
I mean, we started seeing them in camps in the oil patch. This was like 10 years ago. So the technology exists. We use it all over the place. The reason it's not subsidized is because that requires using hydrocarbons. That requires an oil and gas industry.
That's right.
And the crusade for climate change and the environment and cleaning everything up has very little to do with the climate or the environment, and a lot to do with keeping our oil in the ground, reducing the prosperity of this province, and keeping the people subservient to the government, asking them for subsidies. That's what this is about. It's not about a sustainable economy and plan going forward. Like the sustainable development agenda is not that at all.
Yeah.
It's literally about reducing human impact.
Yeah. True.
Or maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? I could have just had too much spaghetti.
It was all you can eat spaghetti, something?
Oh yeah, I had a lot of spaghetti.
Questions about recycling. Is there any real recycling of plastic, or is it just a make work project? I have to wonder if they actually recycle anything. It just leads us to believe that the bin we put everything in gets sorted and recycled. Again, we
of course they do.
Briefly talked about that. Only a couple of questions about recycling batteries, and that could be a whole other topic altogether.
But for this question, of course we recycle. The companies that actually recycle things and repurpose and turn stuff into other products, they do it because it's financially beneficial. It's sustainable. And in a capitalist world where, and I'm sorry if you're a liberal, but what did Gilbo say? I'm a liberal, but a raging sociopath or raging socialist or something. I can't remember.
Socialist, I believe, not social.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. So when it is efficient and it turns a profit and it's sustainable, yes, it's absolutely done. And there's tons of fantastic products out there that you can go and mortgage your home so that you can purchase, like Trek decking, for instance. It's fantastic. It's like boards, but it's made out of recycled plastic, and it will outlast your home. It'll outlast you. But you're also going to pay, I think it's something like $20 a board foot. It's astronomically priced. So from a financial point of view, for the average person, the return on investment, the ROI is like 25 years. It's a long time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But getting back to the food thing, it really is what Dr. Charlebois was saying was that he doesn't want to add extra stuff to make things last longer that are not cheap, right? Like, let's say bananas, I'm not even sure how much are bananas now? Are they 88 cents?
They're like 97 cents a pound.
97 cents. So let's just say they come up with something that is a different alternative and a different packaging and blah, blah, blah. And now it balloons to $1.80 for the same amount of bananas. All of a sudden now we're only eating half the amount of bananas, or we decide to get rid of bananas in our diet. That is not the solution to that. The solution is to keep it pretty much the same cost that we can. But again, it comes up to scalability. And if we can't come up with with something that can scale properly into the millions of boxes that we need, it's not going to fly.
You're right. Absolutely. And look at this from another perspective. If our food from South America or Mexico or whatever is all of a sudden unaffordable because of the methods of production and transport and storage, we don't buy it anymore. Nobody can afford it except for the government whose meals we buy. So the goal of not eating any food that doesn't come from your area is accomplished, and it's accomplished through policy that looks like it's supposed to be beneficial to us. But the reality is it's just one more layer of control and impact on our lives.
Yeah, I was going to say, it would be a shame to get rid of avocados. It'd be a shame to get rid of coffee in our staple.
Yeah,
that's really what we do. Right?
Have you seen that movie, Carrie, where they talk about avocados and cocoa beans and coffee and sugarcane?
No, is it a documentary?
Yeah, it was a documentary. It was talking about these foods that we eat commonly and the impacts they've had in the areas where they came from.
Yeah.
Avocados is on that list, and it's disgusting. What we allowed to happen and took part in because we needed to eat avocado toast every day and be so healthy and virtuous. There's a lot of bad things that happen in other parts of the world. And I find it interesting that a lot of the people who are really, really opposed to the things that we talk about, most freedom and prosperity is at the core. They'll say things like that and scream at the top of their lungs at us with mouthfuls of avocado toast. Tell us we have to keep our oil in the ground and not we're contributing to climate change because we drive cars or whatever while they eat avocados and enjoy an orange in the middle of winter and cucumbers and those types of things, right? The hypocrisy is just astounding. And it carries right on into the conversation we're having now about the federal government banning or proposing to ban the plastics we use to store food. Same thing. They scream that. They say we have to do that while they're jetting in private jets over to Switzerland to tell us or to talk about how they're going to save our lives 4 times a year. Right? And
that's definitely a federal issue. If we were to get oranges in from Florida, they have to come across the Canadian border. So that's how they decide what needs, distribution. How would things change if Alberta was its own country or able to make its own rules in terms of food that was coming in?
And we absolutely should.
Yeah.
We could do other things to accomplish the goals that they want to accomplish. We could innovate here. We could work on recyclable plastics and materials while enhancing our oil and gas industry. We could take advantage of the thousands of years of natural gas that we have beneath us in this province. And we could grow food 365 days a year in Alberta, right here. We wouldn't have to truck it from Mexico. We wouldn't have to fly it from Colombia or whatever. P.S. When you go buy your significant other flowers, those flowers traveled across the world, probably from Holland or Colombia to get here.
Yeah, that's right.
We could do that here, but we're not, because it's not about making things better. It's about regulating the bejesus out of everybody so that we're subservient to the government.
And would it be any cheaper? You're saying flowers from Holland as an example. Would it be cheaper for us to actually use natural gas and create greenhouses and grow our own tulips and then distribute them from here? Or is it just cheaper because it's just easy to, they're already growing over there. You could just ship them in. It's only on a boat.
A boat or an airplane. It's probably an airplane because the flowers don't last that long.
That's right.
Yeah, it would be. And people say, oh, well, what do you mean? My gas bill is horrendous just heating my house. Imagine a greenhouse. You're looking at this all wrong.
No.
That's our natural gas. It belongs to you and me and Carrie. Carrie has more natural gas than most people, but well, that's a different topic.
Excuse me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That gas belongs to us. And if we decide we want to have greenhouses and grow food 365 days of the year, be food secure in this province, and share our food with the rest of the country and other countries, we should be doing that. Yeah. And we wouldn't be paying what we pay to heat our homes for the natural gas because there's so much of it. Yeah. It's priced artificially through a regulated market by people who want to make a lot of money. Plain and simple.
Well, that's certainly been a totally different topic than what we initially started with, but really it comes down to food, comes down to storage, distribution. So, I'm not sure how much longer you want to continue talking about this.
I think I'm going to go eat some more spaghetti.
What I did want to bring up, so again, thank you. I think we're just going to, I think everybody that's watching has, they love Alberta. They want to be able to see Alberta succeed. We want to be able to look at recycling and different alternatives to packaging and distribution, blah, 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 blah. We will definitely be talking more about this topic definitely in the next few months. But one thing I did want to change gears on and just kind of talk a little bit about, actually, we'll get rid of that one. Talk about what's happening in the next couple of weekends with Alberta Prosperity Project. And we'll just put that back on here. What are you doing this weekend, Chris?
I'm traveling somewhere.
That's why I said that. So if you go to the albertaprosperityproject.com and you look under the events, we will see that we are actually doing an Alberta Prosperity Project called the Ambassador Tour with Corey Morgan, Christopher Scott, and Dr. Dennis Modry. That's you. And we're doing it in Calgary on this Friday, on the 10th. And you can sign up for that. You can buy tickets. I believe all the tickets are $10 from here on in. Calgary and then Red Cliff. There you go. Vicky says. So Marta Loop is on the 10th and Red Cliff is on the 12th, which is Medicine Hat. And then after that, next weekend is in Red Deer on the Friday. Then we do Bingley, which is Rocky Mountain House. And that's on the 18th. And then on the 19th, we're in Sherwood Park. So if you're near Edmonton, we hope that you can definitely make it out for that. Thank you, Michelle, for posting that. Yes, albertaprosperityproject.com under events. There you go. nationbuilder.com/events. And what are we speaking on there, Chris, with the Ambassador Project?
So the Ambassador Tour is about helping people become effective ambassadors for Alberta independence or Alberta sovereignty. Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about. And there's a ticket price of $10, I see.
That's right.
I'll tell you folks, I know $10 is a lot of money. I will give you a $10 performance. It'll be worth it.
Are you singing?
I could sing. Yes, I could sing.
Definitely a $10 performance. It's great having
$10 for me to stop singing.
It's definitely great having Corey Morgan, who is the author of the Sovereigntist Handbook. And this is the tour is basically based on Chapter 7, which is how to be an ambassador for sovereignty. And great information that he talks about, as well as Dr. Dennis Modry comes out and talks kind of what we can do to be good ambassadors and have talking points. I don't know how many talking points he has, like 25 different talking points, I think, in terms of if you're confronted with somebody and you want to have an engaging conversation and talk about how Alberta can be better within Canada as its own sovereign either nation or within Canada. And it's great just to hear his knowledge in terms of those speaking points. And then, of course, then you got Chris. Chris wraps it all up at the end.
Yes, I'm the one that speaks and then makes everyone want to leave.
So if that doesn't make you want to go, I don't know what will. So there you go.
So would you like me to wrap this up so everyone wants to hang up on us?
Yeah, I think that that would be great. Again, thank you so much. We do this every Wednesday. We do live webinars mostly. This is actually the first one. I think we've had the guests do it before, and again, it would have happened if we were somehow able to do say a Sunday night. We would have done a Sunday night and let people know. But this was in the middle of the day, and it just didn't work out, and we didn't even know how long he was going to be able to talk to us. So I'm really thankful that we at least had the little bit of time that we had to talk with Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. And but next week, I want to bring up that next week we have Randy Crossan, who is a rights and freedoms advocate and the director at Samaritan's Purse, which is a Christian organization providing spiritual and physical aid to hurting people around the world. Samaritan's Purse has helped people struck with war, poverty, natural disasters, disease, and famine. And because of that, I think you'll definitely want to tune in for that discussion. And that is next Wednesday, the 15th. So with that, is that a good way to wrap up there, Chris?
Well, I have a little bit more wrapping up to do. Is that all right?
Go ahead. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, as Carrie said, thank you folks for watching. I want to remind everybody that the purpose of these webinars isn't just so we can identify all these issues we have and the boondoggle that is our federal government. I'm going to give you an example of a conversation I had today in my cafe as to why we do these webinars. So a guy came into my cafe, or I cooked him breakfast, and he said, we got talking about politics and government a little bit. He says, the government, why they got to touch the CPP? They should just leave it alone. I said, what do you mean they should leave it alone? And he said, well, I don't trust the government. I don't want them dealing with this. And I thought, okay, this is a great segue into a conversation about the Alberta pension plan. I said, I don't trust the government either. I don't trust them at all. And yes, we will be talking about the Alberta pension plan. So knowing that I don't trust the government, why would I want a government that we have zero voice in directing what they do, as opposed to a government where we can actually get things done within our province? I said, when it comes to Ottawa, all of these policies that they push on the country, Alberta, British Columbia, and Saskatchewan together with a unified voice is not enough to stand up and stop it. We are along for the ride, no matter what the policy is, no matter how loud we scream about it. Carbon tax, mismanagement of a pension plan, crappy employment insurance, this food, the plastics issue, all of these things, we cannot stop it. Mm-hmm. And if you don't trust the government, why would you want to allow a government that we have no say in continue to mandate these things on us? Why would you be okay with being taxed without being represented? That's where we're at right now. And I say enough. Enough is enough. All of these issues can be dealt with in an independent Alberta, if enough people show up, that is, and hold our government to accountable. Could you imagine, Carrie, what Alberta would be like trading with the United States if we were independent, managing our own border, and we didn't have this ridiculous policy about food, plastics in the food industry?
Yeah, for sure.
And it was 10 times easier to trade with Alberta than it would be for the rest of the country?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be fantastic. So these webinars aren't about the problems so much as they are about the solution. And the solution is, and always has been, an Alberta that is sovereign, as in charting their own course, making our own rules, doing things on our own, taking care of our own backyard, and telling the federal government to pound sand. I use the word sovereignty because it's sovereignty we're looking for. And I also use the word independence because I know very well that independence is likely the only tool we have to achieve the sovereignty we need to deal with these ridiculous problems that the country's facing. And as Dr. Charlebois said, Alberta needs to be loud. We need to be noisy about these things. We need to be stirring the pot and pushing back against the federal government, because those other provinces depend on us to do that because they can't. That's what these webinars are all about. And that's why we continue to do them. So thank you for participating. in that with us.
And share. I know somebody asked right at the beginning, I've got friends and I've got relatives that are not on Facebook. How do we share this? Well, we usually post this stuff live on Rumble, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, but we also post them after the fact. So we take this, we'll package it up, and we post it back on the Alberta Prosperity Project and Facebook groups, and likewise, if you're not on Facebook, go to, where is that? Oh, there we are. You can go there. You can go to the Chris and Carey Show.
Yes.
Go to the chrisandcarryshow.com, look under the episodes that are happening, and in this case, take a look. We can see Chris had a little bit of an update after the UCP AGM summary there, and a link to the Rumble page that actually has the video on it. So there's tons of information on that website, and I'd advise you that if you like what you see here and you can't find it under the Alberta Prosperity Project, go check out the chrisandcarryshow.com.
Well, I need to point out, Carey, to everyone watching out there, just so you all know, I have never lifted a finger to do anything on the Chris and Carey website. It is all Carey. So that's what he does. He gets up and he gets in front of his computer in his bathrobe and he starts doing this work. I
don't wear a bathrobe.
It takes, oh yeah, he probably doesn't. That's why the webcam's always up a little bit. He does all this work. It takes him hours and hours and hours out of his life. And so I just want to say thank you, Carey, for doing that.
Well, you're quite welcome. I'm more than happy to do it. This is it's ended up becoming a I'm not even sure, just a passion of mine that I just like to do and get things out there. And we have episodes on the new episodes here. Chris and Marco Van Hukenbos did a whole series of videos and getting candid with the candidates prior to the UCP AGM. That was on there. And of course, we were out there on the convoy. We keep those videos up there hours and hours and hours. And then where we're actually available on here, maybe things you've never heard of. We were even on iHeartRadio. And so anyways, that's our little plug. That's, I guess, in theory, how we get paid, because we actually don't get paid.
So, we get paid?
You don't get paid at all. It's all volunteers, but I love doing it. So thanks for giving me a platform.
Speaking of which,
yes,
good point.
Yes,
I'm going to put this call out right now. Going forward, Carey mostly and I a little bit are going to work very hard and put some extra time into these webinars.
Yes,
we'll be putting out a call for sponsors. So if you or anybody you know is interested in helping offset the cost to these webinars, and you want to sponsor them, put your company brand or a shout out or whatever, please get in touch with. I was waiting for you to offer up your email. Get in touch with either me or Carey, or send an email through the contact button at the Alberta Prosperity Project. And we'll work on that, because you know what, it's
that's
something that's gonna have to happen. So.
That's my Alberta Prosperity. Actually, that's not even correct. That's I'm going to just change that, because that is actually not the correct email address. I'm going to change that back. So either one of those gets to me, Carey at whistlestoptruckstop.ca, or this is probably the better one, klambert@albertaprosperity.com. That would definitely get a hold of me through the Alberta Prosperity, and then I know that that's exactly what it's about. So there you go. Does that work for you?
So as for the cost, if you reach out and express your interest, we can talk about that. It's not going to be a lot, but it won't be free. However, we'll try and give you some value for your dollars by giving a shout out to your business and helping you with some advertising and directing people your way. So. Yeah,
we do have. People have asked us how many people actually watch our videos, and literally there are thousands. Dare I say hundreds of thousands? It depends on the topic. Dr. Mackus, who was on last week, 100,000. If it's something else that may not be as interesting, maybe a little bit less. But it just kind of shows that people really are aware of the topics and they're engaging on what they are really interested in. every topic that we've done. And essentially, if you didn't know, a little FYI, this week is actually the 1-year anniversary of the Chris and Carrie show, proper.
Really?
Right? Yeah, it is. And so we've had the website up for a year. We've been doing shows obviously longer than a year, but they were officially posted on different platforms a year ago. So yeah, that was done up, well, essentially this year. And prior to that, even in terms of the webinars, we're probably at about, I don't know, 15, 16 months in, I guess, and what we've been doing with the webinars. And even when we were at the UCP AGM this weekend, it's always humbling when people come up and say, we watch you every Wednesday. We look forward to the conversations with you guys, and we look forward to the topics and things that I didn't even know about. And I do have to say, we do have a crew in the back, Michelle Bisson, who's actively posting stuff on here. She looks after our Facebook and that sort of thing. We have Sean Allen, who does social media. We have who else? We have Sean Hamilton, who actually ends up booking most of the guests now going forward. So if there is something that you want to talk about, you can definitely send the message to me. I end up sending it off to Sean. We've got many guests going out into January and beyond, and I'm looking forward to that. It's great because then it kind of frees my time up to do other things, and Sean's been great being able to do that. So and I'm probably leaving out many names because there's so many people on our operations team. So yeah.
Yes, that is true. It takes a lot of work, like a lot of work.
Yeah. Excellent. So with that, I think we'll wrap up. Does that work for you?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, then let me. I gotta put these. I gotta hide all this. I'm not even sure. I've got way too many things going on. What do you wish you did?
Sorry, I was getting back to my book. Getting back to my book, "Wish You Dead" by Dan Anderson. Sorry.
This is typically what our shows on the Chris and Carrie show are. We shouldn't have been spilling this over onto the Alberta Prosperity Project webinars, but either way, it's all fun. So with that, I'm going to wish you guys good night, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Good night, everybody.